Sometimes we're quick to judge. Sometimes we ride the roller coaster of negativity because it seems like the edgy and easy thing to do. And I would say that that was me when I finished watching James Cameron's Avatar in theaters in 3D back in 2009 at an opening midnight screening. At the time, I said I hated it. And I've said as much here as well. See? Proof that I'm an asshole. I made a blanket statement without explaining why. Who would expect something like that on the internet? But upon reflection, did I truly hate Avatar? Was the story so unimaginative and characters so dull that regardless of its groundbreaking technology, 3D and digital cinematography, and astronomical box office gross, was it not a good film? Well, over a decade later, I watched Avatar again, and while I wouldn't say I hate Avatar, I will say that it's a problematic yet pretty package. To give you the most basic of rundowns before getting into the good and bad here, Jake Sully is a Marine in the sometime future. His twin brother was a scientist and going to be a part of the Avatar program on Pandora, a planet home to the Na'vi, a bipedal people who are vicious warriors and care deeply for nature. Now, the humans are also on Pandora doing the whole neo-colonial thing, and that's obviously leading to some tension. But why are we talking about this Jake Sully guy? Oh, because his brother died, and since Jake and he are twins, and DNA is magic like that, Jake can be mind melded into his Navi avatar body and assist Sigourney Weaver trying to find a peaceful resolution between the humans and the Navi. But little do they know that the military are evil, sneaky sneaks, and they're actually trying to use Jake to get intel on what points they can attack to drive the tribe away from their precious unobtainium. Yep, it's a whole big web of conflict with Jake right in the center. But what would happen if this simple man, Jake Sully, actually came to appreciate the Na'vi people? While the story may be familiar, the world certainly is not. Avatar is still a visual feast. Shot composition, color balance, and the overall look of the film is stunning. The world of Pandora is lush, and every pixel in the planet is populated with denseness and detail. Character and creature design is stunning, landscapes and botany are spellbinding. If there is one thing that James Cameron absolutely nails, it is creating a sense of magic about the world. He is undeniably a top-tier world builder and wanted to show us everything that there was to love and see in Pandora. And we certainly can expect to see more since this has 4 sequels lined up. But it's not just what he shows us, but how he shows it to us. Director of photography Mauro Fiore worked closely with visual effects supervisor at Weta Digital Joe Letteri to ensure that the audience got nothing less than dazzling frames rich with vibrant colors and exceptional shots. Color balance throughout is incredible, with some remarkable moments of contrast and other instances of shots being bathed in unifying hues. Yet despite this vibrance, Avatar never feels like we've stepped into a cartoon. This is a visually smart film and a true celebration of Cameron's imagination and technological mastery. For as sharp a film as Avatar is with its visual language, however, the film's thematic focus is fuzzy at best. It is a sizzler of half-baked themes, none of which leave a viewer fully satisfied, and in fact, might actually make you a little bit queasy if you examine what's actually been cooked up. There's a little bit of something for everyone here, but nothing is great. We've got pro-environment and anti-capitalist messaging, there are nods of spirituality and togetherness, but the problem is that none of them are plumbed in any complex or deep way, leaving you with the thought that there may be an excavation about to happen, but instead you just stand there looking foolish with a shovel and a bunch of surface level holes. This is incredibly disappointing considering that science fiction is a genre with the most flexibility for this sort of thematic exploration. Shows like Star Trek and Black Mirror have presented remarkable questions about all of the elements I've listed in wildly inventive ways, and they've done so in far less time. So the fact that Avatar feels like such a scattershot is a real bummer. What's worse is that some of these messages may not be intentional. Take, for example, our main character, Jake Sully. Now, when I first talked about plot, there was one element that I omitted. Jake is paraplegic. And the issue with Jake being in a wheelchair is that it doesn't seem to be ever used for anything more than a put down or a prop for plot, making his representation actually a touch ableist. In getting to have his mind connected with the Na'vi, Jake is elated because he's able to walk again, and we're supposed to experience a heightened sense of wonder because of this. This is one of the few times that Jake smiles in the film, and it's not as himself. It's not without the use of his legs. Similarly, Jake is bribed by Stephen Lang's character, Colonel Quaritch, to spy on his mission for the military, and in return, he'll get a surgery so that he can walk again. In all of these instances, while Jake may be presented as independent in his wheelchair bound human form, he's always shown as small and diminutive, heightened further when scaled next to towering mechs, or when he is literally helpless on the ground gasping for air next to Neytiri near the film's conclusion. Jake does nothing remotely brave or heroic while human. It's only in his Na'vi form that he is a leader and has the heart of a warrior, and that subtext is troubling. Jake being in a wheelchair additionally feels like a cheap trick to make the audience pity him or at least root for him as an underdog. But with or without his wheelchair, Jake Sully is actually rather unlikable and unsympathetic as a main character. He suffers from something of an Anakin Skywalker syndrome where he's brash, lacks charm, and his smile registers very frequently as more of a sneer. And while a few cases of these can be blamed on perhaps the motion capture and the visual effects team, but I'm inclined to place the blame on actor Sam Worthington. There's also a woodenness across his voiceovers that make him seem really distant. And even when it's revealed that these voiceovers are actually video logs for the scientists, which does snap us out of the faceless narration element, Sully continues to be hard to attach to because these logs are something he's doing begrudgingly. Hey man, very sorry that you got this really cool opportunity to go to Pandora to experience a whole new culture, and all you need to do is a little work. And then these narrations seemingly dissolve back to just being plain voiceover by the end of the film, making it a rather lazy and vague narrative scripting device, but like, whatever. Speaking of delivery, performances from Worthington and most of the military crew have a certain bravado that you'd expect from a Power Thirst commercial, and it's not matched by anyone else in the film. Sigourney Weaver, outside of a pretty cheesy opening scene, is bringing her all in a grounded performance, as are all of the Na'vi, especially Zoe Saldana as Neytiri. We've got these nuanced performances clashing up against machismo posturing. Both believe they're in different films, and that creates a dissonance in their scenes together, and not in a good way. Oh, and speaking of the military, this is a very minor narrative and character gripe, but why did Jake have to be meeting everyone for the first time? What if he knew the colonel from before, and so they had a degree of mutual respect, a father-son dynamic, or a sense of brotherhood? This sort of relationship shift wouldn't have altered the plot in any way, but would have made Jake choosing to defend the Na'vi and then his final showdown with the colonel at the end have so much more weight. Right, I was talking about unintentional messaging. Sorry, back to that. Like the conflict in performances, there are also several beats where ideologies sort of clash up against one another. So the Na'vi are a nature-loving tribe, right? And Neytiri is teaching Jake to respect the nature around him. A perfect example of this is when he's learning to ride one of those dire horse things, as his neural Q bond with the creature is seen as something of sacred. But when it comes to the Ikran and he's told to fight it, which initially you're like, okay, he has to fight it, but then out of respect, the Na'vi and Ikran will bond. Nope. This is a scene where our hero of the film is encouraged to and then forces an animal into submission, which is not great. Also not great is Avatar's relationship to race. And there are quite a few elements stacked against this. Never mind that Avatar is a narrative retread of Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas, or even the notion that a white person being indoctrinated into a savage culture who comes to appreciate that culture and then is ultimately seen by a leader because of something deep within his heart that makes him a leader is subtextually problematic. Avatar also has the troubling fact that characters like Parker Selfridge and Colonel Quaritch are presented as overtly bad people spouting racist rhetoric, and yet the film attempts to make them appear as cool characters. But in that case, most audiences should be able to discern them as interesting but wrong in their ideologies and not be putting them up on pedestals. While those two strikes against the film are valid, I think the biggest racial issue is how Avatar presents people of color in the film and how its future presented is wildly white. Now, that's not to say that the cast isn't diverse. We've got Michelle Rodriguez and Dilip Rao in supporting roles, but all of the major screen leads are white or blue. So all the Na'vi are played by people of color, but grouped into a single other not white tribal people. And while, yes, they are the good guys with a spiritual love for nature, they are also showcased as primitive when compared to the powerful and technologically savvy whites. And it means their true selves, the actual actors themselves, are being masked and unseen by the audience. And again, those are some rough optics. This then brings up the notion, could, say, Michael B. Jordan have played Jake Sully instead of Sam Worthington? What would Avatar have lost or gained if we saw more people of color as any of the other military or scientist personnel? And similarly, could the Na'vi have been played by anyone, not just people of color? How, if at all, would that affect the overall messaging of the film? Now, is it fair to view an older film through a modern lens? Not always, no. But this is also a film made only 10 years ago. This wasn't made during the era of Jim Crow, but Jim Cameron. So, while I agree that the world of Pandora is visually dazzling with every creature Awa protects being unique, and sequences like the Flight of the Banshees are absolutely awe-inspiring, and even that some of the film's messaging railing against materialism and, yes, xenophobia are well-intended, you also need to acknowledge that there are many thorny issues and undermining isms in this movie. So, do I hate Avatar? No. And I'll happily return to Pandora for its sequels. But as a first entry, I would only recommend Avatar with a lot of asterisks. So those are my thoughts on Avatar. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And of course, if you'd like more from me, you can certainly check out my previous review on Back to the Future 3 or my update video for my brother and I about our comics. So comment, click, and keep loving movies, guys. As for me, I'm going to try to figure out what a Pandora-based squid would be like, because all the four-legged creatures on the planet had 6 legs, and they also had those antennae, and a squid has 8 arms and 2 tentacles, so just noodle on that for a bit.